Hello and welcome to the newly refurbished kitchen in the Abbey. My name's Claire and I'm the assistant cook here.
And I am Anya, I'm the Abbey cook, and I shall take you on a wee tour of the kitchen. So here we have the sinks, which are still the same as they used to be. They're the entrance to the storage cupboard, which got slightly enlarged. And then a new walking-in fridge. The cookers, still the same as they used to be. And there in the corner, the good old trusted Hobart, still working well. Probably 40, 50 years old, I'm not sure. He's been here all the time I've been here. And over there, the newly refurbished scullery, the beautiful new shiny dishwasher, very helpful indeed. And then over here they closed the entrance, the stairs down to the burrows, and made a little cupboard for freezer, which is just coming on. And here we have our newest thing, our dumb waiter. I mentioned the old Hobart before. Well, we have lots of new things, new machinery in our kitchen. We still love to work with our old Hobart. And what he's very good at is making bread. Yeasted bread has been for years a staple of the Abbey diet, enjoyed by guests and staff alike. In these strange COVID times, where we are only a small resident group, we have expanded, and instead of sharing our bread with our guests in the refectory, we are making bread for the island. Every Friday we sell, right now, our homemade bread in the community shop. And before that, during lockdown, we actually did home deliveries. People ordered bread and some sweets, maybe some cupcakes or shortbread, and we delivered that to the house. And also we made lunchtime bread for the Argyle Hotel for the season. So it's a lovely way to continue our tradition of making and sharing Abbey bread. For a while now we have been using the sponge method to make bread here in the Abbey kitchen. For this we mix together some of the flour, a little amount of yeast and some warm water. We're using, in this case, a kilo of wholemeal flour. Yeast. We're not using as much yeast as you would use in a recipe where you make the bread all in one go in one day, because with the sponge method you start this the day before. The yeast has time to multiply overnight, so you do not need as much yeast to start with. Warm water. And that gets mixed by hand to a sloppy dough. No kneading needed here in this case. Just nicely mixed together, and then left overnight to do its thing. Using the sponge method has quite a few advantages. By mixing the yeast and the flour and the water together the day before, it has time to ferment this mix, which will result in a complex of acids and enzymes which help develop a good flavour for the final loaf, but also improve the nutritional value of the bread. The complex of acids and enzymes also have a ripening effect on the final gluten structure of the final bread dough, which will result in a strong gluten structure which will hold a lot of air and produce big, nicely risen loaves and a good chewy crust. Can't wait to start baking tomorrow. You can see the yeast has done its work overnight. It has risen and then collapsed again on itself, and in this process it has accumulated taste. There's a really good smell coming out of the bowl, a bit like beer, slightly acidic but really pleasant, and this is ready for the next step now. So next step is adding more flour, some salt and more water, and later in the process also oil. So in this case we add some strong white flour to lighten up the dough a bit. That's 1 kilo in this case. And another 2 kilo of wholemeal flour. Some salt, and then it goes into the whole bit machine, and we're using the dough hook. And now we're adding water, hand-warm water. You can see it slowly coming together. There's quite a beautiful smell of kind of warm wheat coming out of this bowl now. The amount of water you're adding to the flour depends a little bit on the kind of flour you're using. different flours, whether that's wholemeal flour or strong white flour, absorb different amounts of water. So wholemeal flour will usually absorb more water than white flour, because there's still the husk in the flour which will absorb more liquid. So take your amounts in the recipe more as a guideline rather than as a strict figure, because you might actually eat more or less. So it's all about watching the texture, feeling the texture when it comes together. So once this is all incorporated, the flour in the bottom, we'll let this mix for 7 minutes and then add the oil. We don't add the oil in the beginning because adding the fat inhibits the making of the gluten, the stretching of the gluten. So we wait with that and add it halfway through and then mix it in. So 7 minutes over, we add oil, and you can hear it's quite sloppy and it looks like it's not really mixing in, but just give it time and it will. So another 7 to 8 minutes. What you're looking for is a beautifully shiny, stretchy dough which doesn't stick to the sides of the bowl anymore. So while we are using the big mixer, the big Hobart mixer, to knead our bread, of course at home you could do it by hand, which is very satisfying. It's a good workout. It will take you longer than with a machine. The machine will do the kneading in something like 12 to 15, 16 minutes. With your hands you probably will be there up to 20 minutes because we're just not as efficient as a machine, unfortunately. So choose whichever method is most comfortable to you. See, this is very sticky, the gluten hasn't really developed yet. Do not be tempted to add any flour to this right now. The flour will only help temporarily and then it will get sticky again, so just go with it, enjoy the stickiness until eventually it will come together and be a shiny, glossy, stretchy dough. You can see it's coming all nicely together. The dough is becoming smoother, shinier, which means the gluten has been nicely developed and the dough is ready for its first rise and rest. So we're putting the bowl into a warm place, somewhere where there's no draft. It doesn't need to be hot, shouldn't really be too hot or it might rise too quickly. And we leave this for its first rise for about 1 hour. So while you're waiting for the dough to rise, you can prepare your tins, your bread tins. If you want to use bread tins, that's what we do in the Abbey. So oil them nicely so it won't stick to it, or grease your baking sheets if you want to make individual loaves, like round loaves. And while you're at it, preheat your oven. That's really important, that the bread goes into a nicely preheated oven. Okay, the next step, the shaping. So we're scraping all the dough out of the bowl onto a clean surface. This is a really handy scraper for bowls. Makes washing up much easier. Soak your bowl, your rising bowl, with water. Also, again, it makes it much easier to clean. You can see the dough is nice and soft, not sticky at all. Again, there will be a little bit of stickiness, tackiness, but do not be tempted to add any flour at this point. It will only dry out the dough and make it a dry loaf. So this divide into 8 similar parts. You can use scales for this, but if you don't sell the loaves, I don't think it matters if one is a little bit bigger than the other. And then you start the shaping process. For putting the dough into the tins, just stretch your piece of dough out slightly and then roll it up into a kind of fat sausage and place that into the tin. If you want to do an individual round loaf, say for a communion loaf or just for a pretty nice loaf to eat, have some water ready to moisten your hands, which makes it easier, the shaping won't stick, and a bit of flour. So to shape it, you're kind of moving it in your hands and building up a structure, holding the dough underneath, and then when you're happy with that, and then you dip the dough into the flour. This will prevent your bread sticking to the tray, because once you add water to dough, it becomes really, really sticky. Any leftover flour you can put on top, which will look quite pretty on the finished loaf. The loaves now all in their tins or on their trays. They're ready for their second rise in a warm place for about 30 to 40 minutes.
Oh, look at that bread rising.
So after about half an hour, 40 minutes, the loaves have appreciably risen, and it's time for them to go in the oven. If you would like, you can slash the tops or cut the sides of the round loaf, which will make it look pretty. Gives it a rustic look. Remember to set a timer. about an hour, at least an hour's rest, you can cut your bread, and then it's the best part, sharing it.
The one loaf. Out of fire it comes, with bodily contours, satisfying to all senses. A warm loaf, seedy and grainy, soft and being shaped. Its yeasty smell homely and heavenly, of fungus and damp autumn woodlands and the sun's warmth. All life is here, ordinary, good and beautiful, growing things and cow dung, woody roots and seeds, bodies of creatures long dead in the soil, all in this given bread of our beginnings, all in our breaking and sharing, our one loaf.